Hello everyone, my name is Erica Miles, and for my secondary analysis research topic, we'll be discussing school lunch consumption and body fat percentage among elementary school age students from NAENS 2003-2004. So a little bit of background. Childhood obesity is a major public health concern. Approximately 1 in 5 students, or 1 in 5 U.S. children and adolescents have obesity. One main factor of childhood obesity is due to overconsumption of added sugars, saturated fats, and calories. Now, school lunches serve about 100,000 schools and about 30 million children. This is through pre-kindergarten through grade 6. And children consume a substantial amount of their caloric intake while in school, which makes school lunches an important factor in their risk for obesity. Obesity is also known to have a significant impact on both physiological and physical growth in our children, such as social, emotional well-being, self-esteem, academic performance, and lower quality of life. It could also lead to other problematic health conditions such as metabolic disease, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity into adulthood. School lunches that are served to children are required to meet nutritional guidelines consistent with the 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines for Americans by the USDA. But research shows sodium and added sugar content are still above the recommended amount. 12.5% of school lunches that were evaluated did not meet energy needs, protein, carbohydrates, and lipids. Research also shows that children in low-income households who participate in daily school lunch programs have a decrease in obesity prevalence and a decrease of trends when looking at BMI. This is why we will be looking at body fat percentage to see what the results are. Also, childhood obesity as it relates to consumption of school lunches is still unknown for all other socioeconomic statuses. So to better understand the relationship between obesity and school lunches, our research question is, in elementary students, kindergarten through grade 6, living in middle-income households, is there a difference in body fat percentage when consuming school lunches 4 to 5 times a week compared to consuming school lunches 0 to 1 times a week? Now, our objectives, the outcomes of this research will help nutrition professionals determine if school lunches are nutritious for growing, developing children. This research will help identify if there is a link between school lunch consumption and obesity. It'll also help determine ways we can better serve our children during school. Nutrient intake of students will be examined, and this will help identify the association between school lunch consumption and middle-income households by looking at household income. So to do this, our study design is an observational study by secondary analysis of publicly available data through the 2003 to 2004 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Our study subjects were eligible criteria consisted of healthy children that attended schools that serve school lunches, kindergarten through 6th grade, ages 5 to 12 years old. We excluded children who were less than 4 years of age and who were on a medical or preferred diet, such as diabetic, renal, or celiac. And then 491 students were selected through NAENS. The study procedure, we took the number of school lunches consumed as our independent categorical variable, which was divided into 3 groups of consuming lunch. So group 1 was 0 to 1 times a week, group 2 was 2 to 3 times a week, and group 3 was 4 to 5 times a week. And then we took estimated body fat percentage from NAENS as the dependent continuous variable. And we broke our independent variable, number of school lunches, into 3 groups to make a categorical variable, because in NAENS it's continuous. And if we had 2 continuous variables, we would have had to use the Pearson's correlations test, and that wouldn't have given us actionable data. So we broke that up. We had categorical and continuous, and we're able to use different statistical analysis tests to get actionable results. And then we also looked at household income, race, ethnicity, age, gender, weight, and nutrient intake of energy, protein, carbohydrates, total sugars, and total fats as our descriptive and inferential variables to see if they influenced our results. So for our statistical analysis, we conducted it through StatAnow 19BE. We used an analysis of variance test and ANOVA test to analyze the difference between means and with the continuous variables, and then use the chi-square test to analyze associations between categorical variables. If statistically significant, a Tukey post hoc test was done to identify which means were different from each other, and a post hoc power analysis was completed to evaluate the risk for type 2 errors. So our results, a significant difference was seen between race, ethnicity, and school lunch consumption, with higher portions of Mexican American and non-Hispanic Black consuming school lunches 4 to 5 times a week compared to other races and ethnicities. There was no significant difference that was found between household income and consuming school lunches between all the three groups. There's also no significant difference in nutrient intake with total energy, protein, carbohydrates, total sugar, and total fats with all three school lunch groups. And there was no significant difference between mean body fat percentage among consumption of the school lunch groups. So you can see here our results. Race, ethnicity, here's the significant difference, and no significant difference between household income. No, I also took weight and BMI, and no significant difference in weight, and BMI was right there, but not significant. And nutrient intake, all groups were no significant difference. And here is the graph. So you can see this is school lunch consumption down here by mean body fat percentage. Group 1 was at 30.69, so eating school lunch 0 to 1 times a week, to eating school lunches 4 to 5 times a week. Group 3 was at 30.9. So you can see there's barely a difference, and the highest was eating school lunches 2 to 3 times a week. So I thought that was interesting. And then our p-value. So our findings may indicate that school lunches are nutritionally balanced, that students are served quality ingredients from the nutrient intake and from the body fat percentage results. Schools follow the nutritional guidelines set by the USDA, and there's no evidence of a link between obesity and eating school lunches. So at this time, and due to these results, there's no reason to change school lunch ingredients for students, but this is something that we should always keep our eyes on. And for future research, we should consider physical activity. This study did not have physical activity in there, and that can influence body fat percentage. Also, a qualitative analysis to further investigate school lunch consumption and lunch experience for students to see if students are actually eating their lunches. So if they get lunches, if it says they had a lunch 0 to 1 times a week, did they bring a home packed lunch, or did they just not eat? And then do the students who get school lunches 4 to 5 times a week, do they eat the school lunches, or do they just pick one thing and eat it and throw away the rest? So something to consider. So we can conclude that there is no significant difference in body fat percentage among students in kindergarten through 6th grade who consume school lunches 4 to 5 times a week compared to students who consume school lunches 0 to 1 times a week. Here are my references, and thank you.